After clarifying the state of affairs in various regions, what are the working conditions and the relations of workers and the administration in various factories, where workers are especially dissatisfied, and what are the reasons, where there are ties with workers and where one can hope for the success of the campaign? 2 were brought up for discussion important questions. The question of setting up mass agitation among the workers on the basis of their daily needs and the question of resuming the United Labor Fund, which had ceased to exist more than a year ago. A rather lively debate took place on the issue of mass agitation, because on this issue not all those present at the meeting agreed. Vladimir Ilyich insisted on an immediate transition to agitation and conducting it on a wide scale. He was supported by others, including my friends Babushkin and Shelganov, as well as Zinoviev, the latter with particular ardor. On the contrary, I was a little afraid of the concentration of our relatively few forces on agitation, which threatened with a circle of workers' quick failure and seemed to me very dangerous. But the majority quickly leaned on the side of Vladimir Ilyich and the old Social Democrats, and the question of an immediate transition to widespread agitation among the masses in all regions was resolved in a positive way. The issue of resuming the United Working Cash Desk was the subject of heated debate. Representatives of the Nevsky district put forward the need to resume the workers' cash desk, saying that this cash desk would serve as a means of closer unification of workers, both circle and individual workers of various factories. I insisted on the organization of an independent combat working cash desk, which could serve the labor movement of various regions and could serve as a means of closer unification. Vladimir Ilyich denied the possibility of such a value of the labor fund, as an expedient means of uniting workers from different regions, and instead proposed the establishment of a common social democratic cash desk with his group so that all the money collected went to the cash desk of the group of old social democrats to local groups for the needs of their area. The debate over the consolidated box office did not lead to anything decisive. Everyone remained at his own, and a group of workers at the Nevskaya Zastava decided to establish their own special regional working cash desk. But, thanks to the arrests that soon followed, this was not possible. Leaflets outlining the state of affairs and requirements of the Thornton workers were scattered throughout the workshops and buildings of the factory and made a huge impression on the workers. On November 5, 500 weavers went on strike. The factory inspector who arrived on the same day tried to convince the workers, but they stood their ground. Finally, a small concession was made to them, and they started work again on November 8. The workers calmed down for a while, but the police dominated and threw in search of instigators. However, this time no guilty were found, although several people were arrested. But they were released for lack of evidence. Almost simultaneously with these arrests a new leaflet was issued, which can serve as a good example of the few leaflets published before the first failure by a group of old social democrats. I bring this leaflet. Thornton Factory Workers. November 6th and 7th should be memorable days for all of us. The weavers, by their friendly repulse of the master's pressure, proved that in our midst there are still people in the difficult moment who are able to stand up for our common working interests, that our virtuous owners have not yet managed to completely turn us into miserable slaves of their bottomless wallet. Let us, comrades, steadfastly guide our line to the end. We will remember that we can improve our position by common friendly efforts. First of all, comrades, do not fall into the trap that Mr. Gay set up for us. Thorntons. They argue in this way, now is the time for a hitch in the sale of goods, so that under the previous conditions of work in the factory we won't get our former profit and we don't agree on a smaller one, therefore, we will have to go to work brotherhood. Let them take their sides off for bad prices on the market. Only the businessman needs to be equipped not so much, but with less, so that the worker, by its simplicity, does not understand what kind of snack we are preparing for him. Touch everyone at once, all at once, and rise. Nothing can be done with them, but first we will go round the poor weavers, then the others will not dodge. We are not embarrassed with these little people. Are you used to it, and why? We have new brooms sweeping cleaner, so the owners, caring for the welfare of the workers, are slowly and eager to prepare for the workers of all departments of the factory the same future that they have already realized for the weavers. Therefore, if we all remain indifferent to our fate, weaving department, then we will dig a hole in our own hands, into which we will soon be thrown. Read that in a circle of 3p 50k in a crescent, during the same time they managed to live in families of 7 people for 5p, a family of a husband, wife, and child only 2p. They let the last clone go, lived the last pennies, acquired by hellish labor at that time, when the benefactors of the Thornton were increasing millions to millions. But this wasn't enough. and before their eyes more and more victims of the master's greed were thrown out of the gate, and the clip grew in its turn with the most heartless cruelty. They began to bring down the fur and knop without any reservations, which made the production strange of goods. Delays in obtaining the base, as if by chance, increased. Finally, they began to directly reduce working hours, and now they are introducing pieces of 5 spits instead of 9, so that the weaver often bothered with the chores of receiving and filling the basics, for which, as you know, he does not get a penny. They want to starve weavers, and earnings of 1p 62k. In the crescent, which has already begun to appear in the books of accounts of some weavers, may soon become the total earnings of the weaving department. Comrades, would you like to wait for such a master's affection? And if not, if, finally, your hearts are not yet completely petrified, as pure people like us, rally together around our weavers, set out our general requirements, and at every opportunity we will win the best share from our oppressors. Workers of the spinning department, do not be fooled by the stability and some increase in your earnings. After all, almost 2/3 of your brothers are already calculated from the factory, and your best earnings were bought at the cost of hunger thrown out of the gates of your spinners. This is again a tricky trick of the owners, and it's not difficult to understand, if only to calculate how much the entire flax spinning department worked out before and how much it now produces. Workers' new dining. You produce at the cost of 14 from 14 hours of daily labor, pierced from head to toe with killer fumes of paids, already now 12p per month. Pay attention to our requirements. We want to put an end to the illegal deductions that are made from you for the ineptitude of your master. Laborers, and in general all non-specialized workers' factories, do you really hope to keep your 60 to 80k day workers, when the specialist weaver will have to be content with 20k per day? Comrades, do not be blind, do not fall into the master trap, stand stronger for each other, otherwise we all will have a bad time this winter. In the most vigilant way, we should all follow the maneuvers of our hosts in terms of lowering prices and resist with all our might this desperate desire for us. Be deaf to all their excuses about bad deeds. For them it is only less profit for their capital. For us this is the hunger suffering of our families, the deprivation of the last piece of stale bread, and how can you put both on the same scales? Now they press the weavers first, and we must achieve 1. Increase weaving rates to their spring value, i.e. about 6 kopecks on the spits. 2. For the weavers to comply with the law that before the start of work the worker must be declared the amount of the earnings he is making. Let the timesheet signed by the factory inspector not only be on paper, but in practice, as required by law. For weaving, for example, work, instructions on the quality of the wool, the amount of pulls and knop, and it should be added to the existing price. The time spent on the preparatory work should be calculated. 3. Working hours should be distributed so that on our part there are no involuntary absenteeism. Now, for example, it has been adjusted so that the weaver on each piece loses the day to get the warp, and since the piece becomes almost half as much, the weaver will bear a double loss, regardless of the rate sheet. Our host wants to rob us of his earnings, so let him go clean, so that we know for sure that they want to get rid of us. 4. The factory inspector must ensure that prices do not contain fraud, so that they are not double. This means, for example, that the price list should not allow 2 different prices for the same variety of goods, but only with different names. For example, Weber weaved 4p 32k, and the Urals only 4p 14k, but is it not the same thing at work? Even more arrogant swindle is the double price of work with a product of the same name. In this way the Thorntons circumvented the laws on fines, which said that a fine can be imposed only for such damage to work that depended on the negligence of the worker, in which case the deduction should be entered in the workbook under the fine not later than 3 days from the date of its imposition. Yet fines together must be in a strict report, and the amount made up of them cannot go into the pocket of the manufacturer, but must go to the needs of the workers of this factory. And with us, look at our books, it's clean. You might think that our owners are the premost of all hosts. In fact, they bypass our law of ignorance and deftly build up their affairs. You see, are not fined, but we are deducted by paying at a lower price, and while there were 2 prices, the smaller and the larger, to complain about them not at all possible, but they subtract and subtract to themselves in their pocket.